If there was one takeaway from the Chargers 2020 campaign, it was all of us needed to check ourselves on Justin Herbert because a whole bunch of us underestimated him during his rookie season. Well, before it started. Afterward, we knew just how great he was. Herbert named AP Offensive Rookie of the Year, broke pretty much every rookie record there was for a quarterback. He was just incredible. But despite all of that, the Chargers did miss the playoffs. They finished with a losing record. It's 7-9, third in the AFC West, just ahead of the Broncos. All right, let's welcome in former NFL quarterback Danny Kanell, senior NFL writer Pete Prisco. Guys, we are doing team profiles, and today it is the Chargers. This offseason, what they look like, what they need. Pete, I want to start with you, though, with Brandon Staley taking over as head coach of the Chargers, and maybe what we can expect from him.
So, Amanda, I'll go ahead and take over this one. I think and I was bummed to see this, actually, for Justin Herbert's sake, because you've had a young quarterback who has had such a nice start to his career. Now he basically has to start over from scratch, which is tough on anybody, even if you're a veteran with a ton of experience. But you're going to get a defensive-minded coach who's going to come in there, and this team was a really good upper-tier defense not that long ago to try to instill a defensive mindset there along the, to try to establish an identity with a defensive-minded head coach, which kind of bucks the trend of late to have offensive-minded coaches that you pair with your young quarterback. So I don't mind the approach there. I just think the turnover is going to be tough for Justin Herbert. But you've got a younger coach with a new philosophy coming in there, trying to build up a culture and get this team back in the playoffs, which they're not that far away in a division that's getting extremely competitive where you're going to have to try to knock off the Chiefs every year. I don't mind the mindset of, okay, you're not going to shut down or you're not going to go score toe-to-toe with the Chiefs, so you might as well try to slow them down somewhat with a defensive philosophy. I don't mind that. But this can be a really interesting case study to see how it goes for Justin Herbert in year two, to see if he can pick up right where he left off in year one.
You know, I think Brendan Staley's a good coach. I mean, he's going to do a good job with that defense. They're going to change some things. They need some help on that side of the ball. But as far as Justin Herbert, first and foremost, you got to protect him. The guy was, pressured on 27% of his snap dropbacks last year. It's way too many. Look, he can move. He can get outside the pocket. He can create plays with his legs. But he needs to be able to stand back there and scan the field and go through his reads and progressions far better than he did a year ago, because that offensive line was a disaster. And I think that's something, if you're going to build it around Justin Herbert, improve that offensive line.
All right, Pete, so you kind of touched on it there, and I want to follow up on it. So you've got Justin Herbert, but let's talk about the team needs. You said they need an offensive line. They need to protect Justin Herbert. Is that the most pressing thing for you when it comes to the Chargers, Pete? And what else is there?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. They also have a bunch of unrestricted free agents on that offensive line, and I think most of those guys will be brought back as backups if you're going to do that. Dan Feeney, the starting center, probably coming back as a backup. That means they have to go out and get themselves a center. And ideally, the ideal scenario might be to go get Corey Linsley or somebody like that from the Packers. There's some other centers on the market, maybe a veteran like Alex Mack, and then build around him. You can use your draft picks to supplement what you do in free agency, but there are some good, talented offensive linemen that might not be that expensive on the market. As far as defense, look, Melvin Ingram's an unrestricted free agent. Denzel Perryman, unrestricted free agent. Rayshon Jenkins, the safety, unrestricted free agent. Michael Davis, the corner, is an unrestricted free agent. So there's a lot of talent that they have. Even though Ingram didn't have a sack last year, he's a better player than that they're going to have to try and address those needs as well. So pass rusher, offensive line, and then whatever they do with, with the wide receiver position. You can never add enough guys at wide receiver for a thrower like Justin Herbert.
Totally agree. I think corner is also a position I would address too on the defensive side of the ball to try to get there. But I think the interior spot of the offensive line is somewhere you would love to get that middle of the field. It shores up the run game. It gets Justin Herbert a place to step up to, something he did not find a lot of success last year, was running around way too much. And it was something that surprised a lot of people. Didn't know he was that athletic and could make plays outside the pocket. But you don't want to make a living like that, subject him to as many hits as he got to get. And I'd also like to see see them get an edge rusher on the opposite side of Joey Bosa to kind of take some of that pressure off of him so you don't get so many double teams. Get another presence on the other side of him, because I don't know if they're going to be able to keep Melvin Ingram either.
All right, so that's what the team needs. We've obviously have free agency just around the corner, the draft, the Chargers picking 13th overall. But when it comes to free agency, Danny Kanell, is there anybody out there who you think the Chargers should be eyeing?
So there are a few. I think when we talked about offensive line issues, Pete gave a couple good ones. I look at a Brandon Scherf in Washington right now, who is under the franchise tag for them. He's been hurt somewhat, so maybe you can get a little bit of a bargain on him. I think he'd be worth going after. We talked about edge rusher Justin Houston. After a couple, when he went to Indy, probably was one of those contracts you looked at, was the big name, but he's up again. He had pretty nice productive years there in Indianapolis. And then the corner position, Ronald Darby, maybe one of those guys who's underrated, where you could get him at a pretty good value, and you are able to spend that money somewhere else as well. So these are three guys I would target if I was the Chargers.
Yeah, and Brandon Scherf will be expensive, but I had him on my list as well, Danny. I think that makes a lot of sense. Joe Thuney's another one from the Patriots. He's another guy to keep an eye on. And there are a couple other interior offensive linemen. David Andrews from the Patriots, a center. I mentioned Corey Linsley, John Feliciano from the Bills. I think they need to get better on the inside. Trent Williams, if they do want to address the outside, but he's up in the years. And remember, they signed Brian Bulaga last year as an older tackle, and he struggled with injuries. So I think interior is where they should focus on that side of the ball, and there's some good options out there for them.
All right, good options, some holes to fill. So let's say they do, in fact, fill some of them. You have Justin Herbert. You have a new head coach here. Pete Prisco, we'll start with you. Your expectations for the Chargers in 2021, can they improve on last season?
Yeah, I think they can, and I think they can push for a playoff spot. They're not going to catch the Chiefs. I just think the Chiefs are the best team in that division, but they could clearly be the second team and push for a wild card spot. With Justin Herbert, I expect him to take the next step. I think he's special. I thought he was special before the draft. I thought he would be one of those big-time players. I didn't think he would be that good that fast, I'll be honest with you. But I think if they can supplement that offensive line, and they have some young receivers they like, run the ball a little bit, and then get some help for that pass rush to go with Bosa. And remember, Derwin James is coming back as well. They'll have him back in the deep middle. I think this is a team to keep an eye on as a potential wild card team next year.
I totally agree with you. And, last year as a Miami Dolphins fan, I was hoping the Dolphins might shock the world and take Justin Herbert over Tua Tagovailoa. Of course, they didn't, and now the rest is history. Dolphins in the trade talks, potentially going after Deshaun Watson, looking elsewhere, and the Chargers love what they've got in Justin Herbert. But they figured out the biggest problem that every team that's struggling and trying to get to the playoffs and trying to win Super Bowls is trying to address, and that is the quarterback position. So they've got that figured out. We've given some of the pieces they can put around them. First-year coaches, sometimes they were 7-9. They weren't that far off last year. Can you come in? Can you infuse some life? Can you get some new energy? And can you get Justin Herbert to pick up where he left off in his rookie season? I think they can. So I totally agree with you. No one would pick them to win the division over the Chiefs, who's of the same mind. But I do think a playoff spot is within reach for them. In their division, the Broncos are a little bit of a mess trying to figure things out. The Raiders are they've been in this kind of just round mediocrity under John Gruden. Are they going to take the next step? I don't know. So I think the Chargers are right there. And if they can, I wouldn't have any problem picking them over the Raiders at all.
All right, very nice. So both of you have good expectations for the Chargers heading into this next season. Pete, I want to toss this to you. I mentioned the draft, the Chargers picking 13th overall. You did come out with your first mock draft there. What do you think they should do with that pick? Do they stay there? Who do they take? Do they trade out of it? Maybe get some more picks? What would you do?
Well, again, it goes back to free agency first. And if they figure out some of those offensive line issues in free agency, then I think they have some flexibility. Like I mentioned, they have some needs on defense, too. And we talked about Melvin Ingram. Denzel Perryman's gone probably. Cornerback Michael Davis, who actually played pretty well for them and is an under-the-radar free agent. I'm sure they'd like to bring him back. Can they? So they have needs on that side of the ball. But I think offensive line first and foremost. If they can get a good young offensive line in the draft, somebody who could develop preferably a tackle at that spot, then I think that's the ideal scenario for them.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.